Hello, thank you for joining me once more as we talk about the practice of meditation and things pertaining to meditation. This week, I want to talk about how meditation transforms our vision of reality, how meditation induces a shift in consciousness. In the Christian tradition, the word that should be used, it's not used the word appropriately, and I've talked about this a number of times. If you followed my teaching for any amount of time, you've probably heard me say this before, but the word that should be used is repentance. Repentance does not mean stop doing all of the icky things you're doing, you wretched sinner. It's not about stopping the doing of something. Repentance literally means a shift in consciousness. It's going beyond the confines of your own ego. You begin to see beyond the parameters of your own mind. You see the bigger picture. That's one way of putting it. Excuse me. You have a shift in consciousness. The way you see reality is different. And meditation will eventually lead you to that, I believe. And to highlight an experience that I've had, to kind of highlight my point a bit more, I'm going to borrow a line from Buddhism, and I'm going to change some things out. I'm going to replace some things. So there's a line in Buddhism where somebody said that before enlightenment, I think I'm butchering this. I'm going to paraphrase what I can remember. I think I'm messing this up, but I'll be close enough. And it'll work for my purposes. So I think the line is, before enlightenment, rivers were just rivers and mountains were just mountains. During enlightenment, rivers were no longer rivers and mountains were no longer mountains. After enlightenment, rivers were just rivers and mountains were just mountains. I'm pretty sure I quoted that incorrectly, but it's close enough. I'm going to shift things around and make it more Christian, to get at the heart of what that particular wisdom saying is about, but from a Christian perspective. Before meditation, God was just God, and people are just people. During meditation, God is no longer God, and people are no longer people. After meditation, God is just God, and people are just people. So the practice of meditation literally kind of like deconstructs the way that we view reality, especially as we view it through a dualistic lens. You are there, I am here. We're two individuated, different, distinct entities. I am down here, God is up there. I am here, the world is around me. We always view things through the lens of basically a duality. Everything is distinct. We don't see the underlying interconnectedness of everything. Meditation has a way of changing all of that. And people from Hinduism, from Buddhism, from Sufism, from Christianity, that's one common element, regardless of different creeds and different ways of viewing religion and God. And the common element is that people who enter into meditation in these different traditions come out seeing reality in much the same way, that everything is interconnected, and that God is not quite as far off as we might have once thought. And for me, I came to a lot of peace. I remember when it happened. There was a shift that happened within me years ago, or in kind of the Christianity that I was exposed to for the majority of my life, my Christian existence. I didn't grow up in the church. I had a loose connection to Christianity as a child, but in my teenage years got really into it. And in that culture, there was kind of a pecking order that was pushed on us, right? You love God more than anything, and then you love like your family, and then you love other people around you, right? But like God was always the thing that you had to be about more than anything else, and then everything else was secondary to God. And those things might have been important, like your kids, your parents, your spouse, what have you, your closest friends. They're important, but you're not to love them more than you love God. And God is always the thing that you love entirely, always, above and beyond everything else. And at some point, that just became confusing for me. The more I got into the practice of meditation, I realized like that way of looking at existence, that way of having like a pecking order of love and fidelity, no longer made any sense to me. And at one point, I realized that I don't have to choose between who I love more. Like, who do I love more, God or like my family, for example? I can love them both. And I can love God in my family, and I can love my family in God, because that is truer to the heart of reality. God exists within my family, and my family exists within God. I don't have to choose between the two. And it's not to say that, it's not to conflate my family with God. God is God, my family is family. But after the practice of meditation, God is no longer what you thought, and your family is no longer just what you thought. There's an overlap that you begin to perceive as time goes on, and God is literally in all things. It doesn't mean that God is synonymous with all things. In the Christian tradition, we don't conflate reality with the divine as much as some other traditions, faith traditions, can do. We still see God as being completely distinct in God's own way, yet God has interwoven himself, herself, into everything. And so, a spark of the divine is in all people, in all things, everywhere. So you don't have to choose, right? And if the practice of meditation will get you to that vision eventually. And it's not just like a shift in the way you think about the world, but it's a shift in the way you see the world itself. You begin to see God everywhere. As the saying goes in monastic circles, once you begin to see God anywhere, you begin to see God everywhere. So if you can locate God in the center of you through the practice of meditation, you soon begin to see God everywhere. Or if your practice of meditation involves you meditating upon a tree or something like that, right? Once you locate God within that tree, you begin to see God everywhere. You start seeing God anywhere, you start seeing God everywhere. And it includes the people around you. So in reality, the pecking order way of thinking, it's just the product of a dualistic mind. It's the product of an immature spirituality, somebody that hasn't practiced meditation enough, right? Hasn't touched the divine or entered the Holy of Holies enough. But once you hit that point in meditation, you could discard the whole pecking order thing, and you don't have to make a choice, because there is no duality to begin with between God and the people around you and the reality in which you live. You can just love it all and be grateful for it all, right? Yeah. And it doesn't say, some people argue, well, the world and people and the tree that you're meditating on, for example, it's beautiful in its own right, right? It doesn't need God. It's not missing anything if God is not there. And I agree, right? Everything, people, the trees, the reality, it's beautiful in its own right, on its own. It stands on its own and its own beauty. It's wonderful. But like a good marriage, right? A good marriage between spouses, both spouses are perfectly beautiful and wonderful in their own right by themselves. They're whole, they're sufficient, right? Perfect image bearers of God. But in a good marriage, when two people come together out of selfless love for one another, it just amplifies the beauty of the two of them all the more, and this interconnectedness that they share. It makes them more beautiful. It enhances them, right? It doesn't take anything away. And the same is true of reality. Like, just because God exists in the heart of reality, in the things of beauty, and the people around us, it doesn't diminish anything about them. It's the relationship actually enhances it all the more, right? It's like a good marriage. So that's enough. Peace be with you.